Donald Trump was with my former employer there, Bloomberg, and he was speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago and sat down with the Bloomberg News editor-in-chief, who is quite British. Anyway, nothing against the Brits, okay? Anyway, it's just sort of funny to see the contrast between the two guys. And they kind of get into it over tariffs. And so I want to play this for you, get your reaction. Howard Lutnick, you remember him from Cantor Fitzgerald, everybody, became quite known, unfortunately, after 9/11. But anyway, he was on CNBC this morning defending Trump. But let's listen to this exchange, which was quite wild.
You're also talking about 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you. I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40
if
million,
you don't
40
do
million,
this,
President
this
Trump, 40
country
million,
has no
40
chance.
million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're
trade.
all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
Yeah. Oopsie daisy. I think that was, that's Trump buying Bitcoin, which we were talking about earlier. I think, his point there is a really, really, really fascinating one. Just a reminder to subscribe to the channel and to go over to 76 Research. You can get so much information there, including so much information for free. I'm here with Rob Hordon, my colleague there at 76. And we've had, he's a really, really, really well-known investor and has managed billions of dollars for many, many years. And we are lucky to have him at 76. I'm lucky to know him. He's a longtime friend. But let me ask you, Rob, when you hear Trump get sort of criticized on the tariff front, I think it's fair to say, we're all thinking about this stuff a bit differently than we had in the past, right? There was kind of a traditional school of thought that's been turned on its head in part because of him.
Yeah, it's really actually kind of emerged as a fascinating conversation topic or economic subject that's sort of been in the background for a long time, but he's brought it back. I think he's getting picked on a lot because of the tariff policy, because they want to depict him as being an anti-private sector guy or an anti-free trade guy, and they're kind of making a bigger deal about it than it really is. I was taking a look. I mean, the manufacturing sector alone is, it's something like 12, 13% of our economy, in line, just slightly larger than tourism as an industry. So I think there's one misconception is just how important manufacturing actually is in the context of the US economy. So if you think about even, applying some tariffs to different countries on manufactured goods, there's kind of a limit to how much impact that could actually have. But I think just taking a step further back, it's not, we have to get away from these kind of academic theoretical models about free trade, because yes, the concept of comparative advantage, you want all of these countries, to specialize in the things they're good at. It's a very true theoretical concept. You want LeBron James playing basketball, and you want Trish Regan, doing podcasts and right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm trying, I don't know what other example, you want, the professional chefs cooking, right? That's the concept of comparative advantage. But it doesn't quite, there are drawbacks to it, and there are kind of flaws to that theoretical model. And I look at it where if we really go down that path, that's a potential path where the US really de-industrializes, because our advantages are in the service sectors. It's in financial services, technology, entertainment industry. You think about the things that the United States is good at, and we still need to make stuff, for our own health of our own economy, for our own national security. We need to kind of preserve an industrial base. And I think we need to be thoughtful about that. And tariffs are actually kind of an interesting mechanism to protect our industrial base, not just for jobs, but to kind of make sure that the US economy stays diversified, that we are able to make stuff. And it's particularly important in the context of China. And we learned this during the pandemic. We do not want to rely on China for all of our physical goods.
No, for anything. I mean, you couldn't get Lysol. I remember this because, or Clorox wipes. It turns out, it's like made here sort of in the US, but the chemicals were being shipped from China and they couldn't get the chemicals from China. So therefore the company couldn't operate and make the stuff. And it's like, gee, well, this isn't smart, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is kind of basic. And I think that was a wake-up call. In the spirit of nationalism, in that you want to be independent, and when push comes to shove and you get that rainy day, which that was, which turned into a year and then some, you need to be able to cover yourselves. Here's another soundbite here of Donald Trump speaking with the very British Bloomberg reporter.
You're also talking about 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive.
I agree. It's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you. I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have.
Okay, forgive me. I think we did actually play that one. There's a couple different sound bites that I really did enjoy from that exchange, but it's really something to see this kind of discussion. I'm not so sure that Kamala Harris, frankly, would be able to hold her own there and have that conversation. Very interestingly, I should point out, Rob, at the start of that whole program, he got up in front of the whole room and he said, hey, you know what? Bloomberg invited, the Economic Club of Chicago invited Kamala Harris to have a similar conversation, and she refused. She's also incidentally refused Time Magazine, and she has refused, I think, what's his name from Salesforce? Mark was tweeting that out today. I was like, wow. Mark Benioff over there. I mean, she's kind of losing the tech crowd, and then she's not willing to sit down with the Economic Club of Chicago and answer tough questions. So she's dissing Bloomberg, she's dissing Time. No one in tech really seems to like her right now, which is fascinating to me because so many of them were big time libs. And now they're like, I don't think so. What's going on?
Yeah, or at least maybe a lot of the tech people who are kind of more aligned with Trump's view are speaking out and feel more emboldened. And I actually think that's just sort of more of a broad-based observation that, you rewind a year or two ago, everyone felt so squelched and so inhibited in terms of what they could say, or can they say, I agree with Trump on this or that. And now I think, it's kind of delightful to see that actually Americans are back to, speaking their minds and sharing their actual views. And so I think that's kind of, part of it. But in terms of Kamala, I mean, she's in a bind because on the one hand, if she hides, she's not going to get any support. But on the other hand, if she does participate in these events, her ignorance is exposed. And okay, for the first interview, you can say, I was from a middle-class family and, I believe in the opportunity economy and right. I mean, but those platitudes wear thin, and to kind of, maybe the Bloomberg guy disagreed with Trump on the narrow issue of tariffs, but at least he's able to go back and forth with him.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I loved it. I think it's really important to have these real conversations. And I don't think she could go back and forth at all. I think they know that. And so that's why they're not putting her out there.